It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Bill Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day. So join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Disappointed we didn't win today because it's always about today. Friday, Saturday were great, but we came out here to win today. So we'll worry about momentum once we get back to work. But today's just very disappointed. We're all disappointed we didn't get that win today.
It's a killer when you're playing a team against like Florida State, who leads the country in walks as an offense. They do such a good job of forcing you to throw the ball over the plate, of working the count, and getting into the bullpen because of that. So continue to play good defense. We've had a great weekend defensively.
A pleasant good afternoon to you and yours, and welcome to Doug Kingsmore Stadium on the campus of Clemson University, where the Clemson Tigers and Florida State Seminoles will play the rubber match of their three-game series here at Clemson, and it is Sports Talk on the road on South Carolina Radio Network, not only in the upstate but also in our Main Street Columbia studios. Will Pelagic here with you at Clemson. My cohorts, Phil Kornblut and Professor Tom Hayes, are in Columbia in the capital city, where the South Carolina Gamecocks had quite a weekend. They won 2 out of their 3 games with Ole Miss. And while it was a disappointing result yesterday, we'll start with them, but because of the fact that it looked like they were going to get a sweep, they did not, but still a very successful weekend for them, and they're in the top 50 in the RPI now.
Yeah, next to the Yankees, the hottest team in baseball, the South Carolina Gamecocks. At least they were. Would have been nice to get that game yesterday. Had to go extra innings and could not find a way to win that. Had plenty of offense in terms of the base hits and all that, but the critical hits weren't there. You were there for all 3 games, so you have a much better feel for what happened with the Gamecocks over the weekend. But still, you have to feel good if you're Mark Kingston and the Gamecock clan about how far they have come. That's 3 straight SEC series victories for them. RPI now at 42. They're in the upper echelon of the SEC standings at this point. So the arrow is definitely pointed upward for South Carolina, with Missouri coming in this weekend, the last place team in the East. That's got to be the series you have to sweep. You cannot afford a loss to a team that is that far down in the standings. And then you go to Texas A&M to wrap up league play. But here's the thing, Will, that's going to haunt South Carolina, unless they just run the table here down the stretch, assuming they're going to take another loss or two. Their record against the Group 4 teams in the RPI, that's the lowest rated teams in the RPI. Gamecocks have 5 losses against teams in that group. That's more than any other top 60 RPI team. And so when the committee, headed by Ray Tanner, sits down and starts breaking down the data, the question will be, when it comes to South Carolina, and A, making the tournament, B, what their seed is going to be, and C, where they're going to be placed, how heavy will that weigh on the minds of the committee? How much will it be outweighed by the way the Gamecocks are finishing the season versus how they played and those kinds of losses?
That's where the committee has to define the team, because are you saying that this Gamecock team lost 5 games to those teams, or was it the Gamecock injury-riddled team that did it? Because now there's a Jekyll and Hyde equation in there. Now, if this was basketball and they were sitting there and Duke was on there and they had 5 bad losses, they would say, well, that was not the Duke team. Here's the Duke team now. Well, they ought to do the same thing in baseball. This is the team that was consummated at the beginning of the year, which we did not see because of the injuries.
Well, the one thing that the tournament committees across the sports, and I think they all can kind of take a page from each other in this, is that they don't account for a team changing itself over the course of a season. I mean, like most teams are, even whether you have injuries or not, you are not the same team in April and May that you are when you start in February. It just isn't the way that baseball goes. And, a lot of the people that they were counting on to do good things were not there for them at the beginning of the year. Conversely, as a result of that, the guys that they did play were able to get the kind of season where they could be counted upon, guys who probably were playing lesser roles or here even projected to not even have roles on the team, Corn. They actually, benefited, I think, in a very huge way because of that, especially with the pitching staff.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, this is not the South Carolina team of earlier in the year. And also, these committees put a heavy premium on how you're playing down the stretch of the season. We always talk about in basketball, your last 10 games. Same thing in baseball. How did you play as they make the picks in late May? How did you play through the month of May? And if South Carolina can keep it up, I mean, their body of work for the latter part of the season will be excellent, and that may be enough to offset some of the stumbles they had early on. I'm surprised that only one of the polls today has South Carolina ranked, and of course, that's the very liberal Collegiate Baseball. Mm-hmm. They've got the Gamecocks ranked 11th. No other poll has the Gamecocks ranked in the top 25. They've got them all the way up at 11. I'm a little surprised because, when you rank a team, when you rank a top 25, you're thinking, well, who are the best 25 teams going right now? Mm-hmm. That's what you should be looking at. And certainly South Carolina is playing amongst the best 25 teams in the country right now. Their performance, their wins against quality opponents. Look, they've beaten LSU head-to-head, swept them. They took 2 out of 3 from Ole Miss, nationally ranked in the top 5. They took 2 out of 3 at Vanderbilt, ranked in the top 15 at the time. Now, Vandy got swept by Georgia over the weekend. Maybe there's something with Vandy, but still that shouldn't take away from South Carolina and what it's doing right now.
And Will, I think probably one of the key points that people have to make when they're trying to decide where South Carolina sits is the fact that you could really add a detriment to a team that's highly ranked, because you sit there and I've got a regional. Well, wait a minute. Why are you ranking South Carolina as a 3rd seed and putting them in our regional? We don't want them in our regional. So in other words, you can lower South Carolina's ranking, but at the same time hurt a high-ranked team by sticking them in their regional.
Mm-hmm. You certainly can. Of course, we are at Doug Kingsmore Stadium at Clemson, where they are playing a Saturday through Monday series, made for television Monday night rubber match that will be nationally televised on ESPN2. We'll be here for that during our second hour, as it first pitch was just after 7 o'clock. The 3-2 they lost on Saturday, did Clemson, in a game where Mike Martin broke the all-time NCAA head coach wins record at 1,976 now, to his credit, as he passes the former Texas coach Augie Garrido in the game that went 13 innings with Florida State on top. The Bats came back for Clemson yesterday. They won 12-7. The wind was blowing out here at Doug Kingsmore, and now Jake Higginbotham and Cole Sands match up in a game I think Clemson has to win once again to try and get that last little impression on the NCAA tournament committee that they belong in the top half of those national seeds, possibly hosting a regional.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And this is the last of the really big names on their schedule, because they've got Austin Peay, they've got Western Carolina, they've got Pitt. This is before they get to the ACC tournament. So this is a big RPI opportunity. And one of the questions going into tonight's game, based on what Monty Lee said after last night, was his bullpen situation. He really needs Higginbotham to give him some innings. He's got to be an innings eater tonight. None of the starters for Clemson in the series thus far, the two starters, neither has gotten past the sixth inning. So the bullpen has gotten a lot of work, and he wants to give that bullpen as much of a break as he can tonight. So watching how he handles Higginbotham, the pitch count, and how effective Higginbotham is obviously going to be important. And he's also pushing that, they cannot give Florida State free passes. They've walked Florida State 10 times in the series thus far. And Florida State's the #1 team in the country at drawing walks. He knows Higginbotham's got to go in there and throw strikes, eat up innings, and give him a chance to give his bullpen a little bit of a break tonight.
He needs to, and the problem for Higginbotham is that he lately has been kind of all over the place. He has only entered the sixth inning in one of his last 6 starts. He went 4 2/3 against Louisville, just 3 innings against Boston College, a pair of 5-inning performances against Notre Dame and Wake Forest, and 3 2/3 innings last week against Virginia. Only the game against Miami did he go 7 1/3 in a game they eventually lost. So in that perspective, Clemson needs a lot, Pro, and they need those bats to be where they were yesterday.
All right, we're going to hit a break, and we'll come right back to you. Will is up at Clemson. More sports talk coming up in a moment.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, from the upstate and from the Midlands in the capital city. Will Pelagic, Phil Kornblue, Professor Tom Hayes, as we're here at Doug Kingsmore Stadium, the grounds crew preparing the infield for tonight's action between Florida State and Clemson. More on that as we go throughout the show. Saw an interesting article, gentlemen, about the 2019 NFL draft. No, it's not too early to have a mock draft. No, it's not too early. And not only is it not too early, but it looks very favorably upon prospective NFL players from the Palmetto State. All four of Clemson's defensive linemen who project to be in the draft next year, Austin Bryant, Cleveland Farrell, also the two big defensive tackles in Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins, projected to go in the opening round. In fact, in the opening 21 picks, and also a certain wide receiver from South Carolina, Deebo Samuel, is also projected to go in the top 5 in that draft mock, if you will. I know, Corn, you're not the biggest on the mocks because, again, it's very inconsistent to kind of see what we see going into a season. But we are expecting to see a lot of NFL-ready talent in both places this upcoming season.
Yeah, where's that mock draft got Trevor Lawrence going? What round? Or what pick? What pick in the first round?
He's not available yet.
No, he's going to –
available.
I understand he's going to hire an attorney and sue for the right to come out after his freshman year, based on the projected hype. The projection. Well, listen, he's already a Heisman contender by one of the national pundits. So why can't he sue and enter the NFL draft?
You know, I love whenever I come up here to Clemson because I try to go and get the pulse of the city just because we don't get to spend as much time up here.
Doesn't take long.
Well, you know, it's easy for me. And the thing is, the Trevor Lawrence hype is real. It is real up here.
You consider spending 2 hours drinking at the SO Club, getting the pulse of the city of Clemson? Is that what you consider?
I was not drinking at the SO Club, Corn, but I was at the SO Club. It's fine. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. The situation there, I think, you know, those are where people, I think, that's where real Clemson fans go, I think. And here's the thing. They have total reason for the hype for Trevor Lawrence. That's the thing. My only qualm is this, is that, again, I worry about the message in the locker room, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, and we'll probably talk about it for a little bit more as we get to the beginning of the year. But regardless of where he goes, we will see a lot of talent on the field this upcoming season.
I think for Clemson, though, still with that defensive line, early on, this team, they're going to tell them, just like some pitchers, it's time to pitch a shutout and let our offense do its thing. And this is the Clemson defense still in my mind, Corn, with some questions in the secondary. They still can turn offenses over and give the ball on the other side of the 50 to their offense. And that makes it good for any young quarterback anytime they can do that.
Celtics up 15-14 on Philly. If I can rely on my man David Hood, and I know you'll see him up there, so tell him that I said hello. He won't mind me sharing his thoughts on this. We were talking the other night about it. And, I mean, he thinks it's going to be I said, David, who do you think will be the starting quarterback against Furman? And he said, Kelly Bryant. I said, who do you think will be the starting quarterback at Texas A&M? He said, Kelly Bryant. I said, why would you say that? He said, well, from knowing Dabo and how Dabo operates, he's going to give the older guy, the senior, the guy that won an ACC championship last year, all the benefit and every opportunity. And I said, well, okay, that's well and good, but you flash back to Deshaun Watson's freshman year, in which he was held back for a little bit before getting a chance to play. And you think back, you know, if Deshaun Watson had played more against Georgia in that opener, maybe Clemson wins that game. If he had started against Florida State and run most of that game, maybe Clemson wins that game. And so, but as he pointed out, that's a different situation. I mean, Cole Stout had not been a starter, had not won an ACC championship. He had just won the job in the spring and the fall. So anyway, from what David thinks, and he's up there, of course, watching and observing and listening to everything, that's what he thinks. And I think there's some there's some rationale for that, but I also go back to what was said after the spring game and what they have said since. I still have a feeling that maybe it won't be Furman, but it could be. And if Kelly Bryant is not great and the offense isn't great for whatever reason, you could see that transition happen pretty quickly.
Well, what I go back to Bill Parcells said years ago with the Dallas quarterback when he said, "Don't anoint him yet." Well, Dabo's doing the same thing with his prize freshman. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on a young guy this early. And if he fails early, what does that do to the quarterback that you demoted who was a senior? So let the senior do his thing and ease the young man into playing.
Well, the other part of this is, and I think this is probably the part of it that's not talked about enough, guys, is the fact that if you give Kelly Bryant any indication that his lease is short or shortened than it was last year, that puts an extra amount of undue pressure on him. Now, granted, there's pressure you could argue anytime somebody takes the field, but in my mind, I think that you're causing a potential bad situation for Kelly if he goes in there and has to basically pitch a perfect game, if you will, to use a cross-sport analogy. And I think that's something that could be very detrimental to his psyche and his playing ability if he has to go in there, again, thinking he has to be perfect.
Well, unfortunately for Kelly, he's going to be under that pressure because, the Clemson fans appreciate, love him, thank him for doing what he did last year. But they read the hype. They read the websites. They know what's going on, and they believe they've got a very special quarterback. We're talking, again, a generational type quarterback that can make Clemson with that defense. And if Trevor Lawrence is running that offense at the level that he is projected to be able to run it, my goodness, it could make Clemson totally unbeatable this coming season. They're pretty much unbeatable with Kelly Bryant. This might put them, if this kid is everything that people say. And sometimes we talk about freshmen, we talk about poise, we talk about experience. You can throw all that out the window when it comes to certain freshmen who can handle it. Deshaun Watson was one of those. He could handle it. I think Jake Bentley, had he been given the normal opportunity to go through high school all the way and then come in as a freshman and go through a spring practice and all that, as a true freshman, as smart as he is and as well as he knows quarterbacking and knows the game, I think he could have been one of those quarterbacks to handle the situation well as a true freshman. Just go back and look at what he did when he was thrown into the fire midway through his freshman year when he should have been in high school. So, you have those quarterbacks who can step in and do it, and they're impatient, these guys, and the fans can be impatient as well. Now, if Clemson comes out with Kelly at quarterback against Furman and goes up and down the field with no problem, and they look smooth, and they've picked up where they left off, before the Alabama game, I guess that would have been against South Carolina.
Miami.
Oh, yeah, Miami, if I got the championship game. Yeah, if they pick up where they left off against Miami with him at quarterback, then, yeah, I think, he goes ahead and leads them into College Station. You go from there. But, again, I think there's – in the minds of the coaches, unless they're just playing with everybody, it seems to me like there's going to be competition for the first half of August when fall camp gets underway to see who is going to be the guy.
It's an odd dynamic, bro. That's the thing. I think it is. It's just such an odd dynamic when the fact that you have somebody who basically, I don't want to say had a perfect year, but had a mostly flawless year aside from the one bad game, which happened to be the last game.
Well, the one thing I'll say about Kelly Bryant is I don't know if he has a position at the next level, but if he does, he will be the first guy I can remember in my lifetime in college that had to follow a legend and then have a guy that's not played it down yet already a legend. He's sandwiched between two legends. If he plays great this year, I give him a blue star.
We were talking about NFL-bound Clemson players. There's one who is currently on an NFL team who kind of stepped in some hot water with a comment he made earlier today. We will explain when we come back. And also give you more of a preview of things to come tonight at Doug Kingsville between Florida State and Clemson here on Sports Talk. Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We're brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union. Visit foundersfcu.com to see how they can assist you in all of your financial needs. Founders Federal Credit Union, an official sponsor of Sports Talk and South Carolina Radio Network. So I'm minding my own business. I still have no idea how Korn knew that I was at the Esso Club, but I saw this story. You must have spies up there, Korn. It's okay, though. I saw this story tweeted out by our friend Matt Connolly of the state newspaper. Apparently, Dorian O'Daniel has gotten himself in some hot water with people here in the Palmetto State. He said, I will say Kansas City barbecue probably puts South Carolina barbecue to shame Don't tweet that out or anything. Well, it was tweeted out by somebody from Chiefsland, if you will, Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. And I have to say, this comment was made with basically almost the identity of sacrilege among a lot of people here in the Palmetto State. I don't know how you take his comments to mean, Corn.
Well, I hadn't really thought about it, to be honest with you. I don't keep up with what Mr. O'Daniel, prefers to eat. He's from the north, so what does he know about barbecue to begin with?
Right.
And now he's going to be making his home in Kansas City, so he's going to obviously, try and say things to endear himself to the populace there. And maybe he's looking at a sponsorship or two there too from the local barbecue people. Listen, the barbecue out there, I'm sure is quite good. I've had barbecue driving through Columbia, Missouri, and right off of I-70. That was quite good. I've had barbecue in across the border in Omaha, which obviously is very good. So, look, it's all about the taste buds and what you like.
I'm just saying, I
wouldn't hold against Mr. O'Daniel to take away from his fine career at Clemson.
Well, who is the all-star home run hitter for the Nationals? What's his name?
Bryce Harper.
Bryce Harper. I'll never forget one time somebody asked him one of those questions when he was first up with the Nationals. He looked at the reporter and said, "That's a clown question, bro." In other words, he wouldn't answer the question because he said, "You trying to set me up to say something to make one side angry and the other side kind of happy." So if I was Doran O'Daniel, I'd have taken the fifth. Or up fifth.
I've had barbecue both places. And I will say this, and even I could even throw Texas barbecue into the mix as well.
Careful.
I know. I'm being careful. This is what I will say. Texas probably has the best beef brisket that I've ever had. South Carolina has the best pulled pork barbecue I've ever had. Kansas City has acceptable variations of both, but I wouldn't say that anything out of there is superior to what they have out here. That's what I will say. That is about as diplomatic as the way I can play. As a way I can play that.
Well, you sashay over to the Cajun Cafe out there and start comparing food from other regions to what they're cooking out there in the outfield and see what kind of reaction you get.
Oh, is that a fact? I had a situation where I actually came across a couple from North Myrtle Beach in Houston, and I tried to get them to try some of the beef brisket in Houston. And you would have thought I was asking them to go out in the middle of traffic and play in traffic. Like you thought I was asking them to commit suicide. That's how loyal people are to their barbecue. It's probably the most loyal food item that I've come across in my travels across the United States. I don't know how you feel, Corn.
Well, let me jump to a few more.
About their
Let's jump to a few more serious things besides what you like to eat and what Darian O'Daniel prefers for barbecue. But I got a couple of things here I want to mention. We'll get to recruiting coming up, but the USC women are getting Nellie Perry from Clemson, the grad transfer. We'll talk more about that coming up. McBee High School football coach Charlie Poole is retiring after this school year. Athletic director Donna McCaskill telling that to the Florence Morning News. 41-40 in 7 seasons. Did a really good job at McBee. That's the home of Rick Henry, so they don't have many really good athletes there. And 3 upper state finals in 1A while he was there. He was also the coach at Lamar, 71-49 in his overall 71-49 in his coaching career. So he is retiring after the school year. And folks want to go to our website, SportsTalkSC.com, participate in our poll question of the week. We can kick this around. Question is, what will USC average on offense this season? We're talking about Clemson and their juggernaut defense and what they might do on offense. Well, the Gamecocks are expected to be much, much better on offense this season. Of course, they were expected to be much better last season. It didn't work out that way, but they've made so many changes in terms of personnel up front, personnel in the front office, and the quarterback is older, smarter. And so right now, most people believe that the Gamecocks will average between 30 and 35. That's 30% of the vote, 28%, 25 to 30. Some people believe a combined 23% say the Gamecocks will average between 20 and 25 points or less. So 7% say the Gamecocks will average over 40 points per game. I certainly believe now, I said this last year and they made me look stupid. I'm going to say it again. This offense is going to average 30-plus points per game. It's got to average 30-plus points per game.
I'm going to give you a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, Will, I'm going to give you a reason why nobody's thinking this but me. But you got to think this way. Last year, South Carolina, because of the personnel and the lack of depth, played bend but don't break defense, which means the other team's offense held the football a long time. I believe this year their defense will be called on to be more aggressive, turn the football over, and that's another reason this offense will score more, because I think the defense is more equipped now with their depth to turn other offenses over.
Well, I think the sense of urgency for South Carolina's offense is going to really, I think, ramp up the execution level. And I think when we saw the tempo used in the spring, that I think really was the main key. And the other key, too, is a full season of Deebo Samuel. Look, I know that it's hard to expect much out of him when he really didn't play as much as he was projected to in the spring. But if he's ready by the fall, like Will Muschamp says he will be, I mean, there's only one player, that's Chad Terrell, who's not going to be available for them when they start fall practice. If you can get a full fall out of Deebo Samuel and you can get a full season of him and the regular season out of him, the sky's the limit for them. And I think, while I have my issues with the way Jake Bentley played during 2017, I think a lot of that was out of his control because, again, I think, things were so depleted for him and they were having to count on freshman receivers and things of that nature. In my mind, you will see a better Jake Bentley and you'll see a better Gamecock offense.
He also will have a Linus blanket with him this year, and that is a healthy Casey Crosby in the middle of the field. That was a guy that they missed also last year.
Well, he's got to play big.
Yes.
I mean, there's no other way to put it. They don't have anybody behind him who can come in and play big. So he has got to be great. And that's how it's got to be presented to Jake. I mean, and I'm sure he's going to work as hard as he can. That's the kind of person that he is and type of quarterback that he is, devoted to his craft. He's got to play great. And that means cutting down the interceptions, number one. That'd be a big thing. Increasing the completion percentage to, 68, 70%. That's where you got to be if you're going to be in that great category. And I think he can do that. I think he's going to have the receivers. I really think the offensive line is going to be very good, and they can augment what they're doing in the passing game with this RPO with what should be a very good stable of running backs. So if this offense doesn't take off, then I don't know. Will Muschamp, he did what he had to do. He changed coordinators. Not only that, he brought in an old a gray head who's been around a lot of terrific offenses over the years in the SEC. If this doesn't work, Muschamp's just got to look in the mirror and go, what do I have to do to make an offense work?
I mean, the only thing that I think needs to happen that they did not have last year, they need to be able to prove to me that they can get short yardages on third down. They were deathly terrible in that department last year. So in my mind, they need to figure out a way to get short yardages down there. As Corn mentioned, a lot of recruiting coming up today, and including a Clemson commit and somebody who is changing colors inside the Palmetto State. That's next on Sports Talk.
Life is
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here at Doug Kingsmore Stadium and in the Midlands in our Main Street, Columbia, South Carolina studios as we get you ready for Clemson and Florida State here tonight at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. The teams have split the first two in this series. Clemson losing Friday night 3-2, and Clemson winning 12-7 in game two of the series yesterday on 13 hits. They were able to get the bats going, and head coach Monty Lee not only gave a recap from last night, but also a preview to today's rubber match finale.
Got to try to figure out what we're going to do out of the bullpen. Obviously, we've used a lot of our pen over the first two ball games, and hopefully Higgy can give us a deep start and we can get to strike one. I think that's a big key for us. We got to get to strike one, and we've got to limit the free pass. The free pass is a killer when you're playing a team against like Florida State, who leads the country in walks as an offense. They do such a good job of forcing you to throw the ball over the plate, of working the count, and getting into the bullpen because of that. So we got to get to strike one tomorrow. Continue to play good defense. We've had a great weekend defensively, played very, very well defensively, and swung the bats well today, and hopefully we can carry that into tomorrow.
Coach, Seth was over 6 last night. How good was it to see him go 2 for 4 with a homer today?
Well, Seth. It's just a matter of time, and hopefully today's performance can get him going in the right direction. He definitely swung the bat well today, hit the home run, and had another hit, scored 3 runs. So hopefully Seth can get it going for us. We definitely need him to be a force for us offensively down the stretch here.
Do you feel like juggling the lineup a little bit, maybe to give some people a jolt?
Well, we felt like I put Wilkie in the 2-hole today. I just felt like he's having really, really good at bats. And, we'd like to leave Chris in the 4-hole. We feel like Chris is one of our best guys with runners in scoring position, and he's been there pretty much the whole season. felt like sticking Mookie up in the 2-hole just because he makes a lot of good contact and he hits well with runners in scoring position, and also helps us from a stagger standpoint. We feel like it's tough. I know on our end it's very tough to pitch to a lineup that staggers righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty. So we felt like, with Logan hitting left-handed versus the right-handed starter, then Wilkie righty, Seth lefty, and Chris righty, and then Birdie lefty just gives a pitching staff a lot of tough looks. And it's tough to match up that way. And it worked today, so we'll certainly consider doing it again tomorrow.
Okay, there you go. Monty Lee setting the table for the Tigers in Florida State. The rubber game of that series getting underway on ESPN2 at 7 o'clock. We'll hear more from Will coming up in a little bit up at Doug Kingsmore Stadium. Right now, the big news of the day, Boston leading Philadelphia 35-32 late in the second quarter of their playoff game as South Carolina's team, the Boston Celtics, go for the sweep of the 76ers. Yes, of course, the Celtics are South Carolina's team. Now to recruiting here on a Monday night. And over the weekend, Clemson did it again in the transfer market. Boy, I tell you what, Brad Brownell, he might not be very good the first time around in recruiting some people, but he's very good the second time around because he got another big-time grad transfer to come to Clemson in 6'10" Javon White from Oral Roberts. And we say big-time, I mean, he certainly has the look of a big-time player. 10 points, 9 rebounds per game last year. Very good shooting numbers from the floor, except not so good from the foul line, something he said he will concentrate on. And what makes him particularly special is that he's got 2 years of eligibility. So, if he doesn't jump to the NBA, you'll have a guy that you can have for a couple of years and develop and put him in with the Thomas in the middle of that defense. They're both rim protectors. They're both shot blockers. And he feels like he'll play well with Elijah Thomas on the inside of Clemson's defense there. And he said, the chance to play in the ACC and the relationship he's built with the Clemson coaches and like the campus and the facilities and all of that went into his decision, picking Clemson over LSU. Now, today, South Carolina got the word from former Clemson women's guard Nellie Perry that she'll play her year with the USC women. She missed all of last season with a shoulder injury. She was Clemson's leading scorer as a junior. She's probably been the best player on Clemson's team each of the years she was there. She's from Camden, New Jersey. And this is a big reason why things did not go well for Clemson this past season because she was out all year. So this is a big pickup for USC as she'll play her grad transfer year with the USC women. Now, last night, 6'9" DJ Burns of York Prep announced he's reclassified to 2018. And so he's pushed up the process. This coming after he took an official visit to USC over the weekend with his parents and his sister. And now he'll move his process ahead with a decision probably coming up sometime later this summer. He's a very good student. He had all the academic work done. And he decided instead of going to York Tech or Winthrop and doing a class because he had finished all the work he needed at York Prep, he decided to go ahead and get his college career and his college education underway because he's academically eligible to do so and he's physically ready to make the move. He said the visit to USC went very well. Spent a lot of time with Frank Booker, but he also got a chance to see Frank Martin up close and personal and was really impressed by what he saw from Martin behind the scenes. He said he's not that same guy you see in a game yelling at people and trying to fire people up. So he really liked that. So he's taken officials to USC and Tennessee now. He is planning more. Virginia and Georgia are two others known to be showing interest. And Burns said there are others. Houston offered him last week. Martin and Virginia's Tony Bennett have had in-home visits. Tennessee's Rick Barnes has not been in yet. So he is going to go to Charlottesville for the NBA Top 100 camp. That's June 12 through 17. He's non-committal about a possible visit to Virginia, saying the rules forbid one during the camp. He'd have to go before the camp or after the camp if that can be worked out. USC target 6'3" Devontae Bandu of Hutchinson Junior College, Kansas, took an official to Baylor this past weekend. No news from him. ESPN's Jeff Borzello reported USC is one of the schools to contact Drexel grad transfer Jermaine Isabel since he got his release. We go to football now. 2020 offensive lineman Isaiah Walker of Miami plans to announce a commitment at 1:30 tomorrow. USC is in strong shape with him. We'd have to consider South Carolina to be the favorite for him. And now again, he tells us in talking with him the other day, or messaging with him, that South Carolina is prepared to take his commitments. There's been some reporting on, I think it was the Big Spur, where they were kind of downplaying this one as maybe one they weren't 100% sure South Carolina was going to take it. So, you know, we got a Trey Wilkins thing all over here again, possibly to keep an eye on tomorrow. But if the kid announces, you wonder why somebody would announce and wouldn't know that their commitment would be taken. Just like with the Wilkins thing, the Wilkins thing, he believed, his coaches believed that everything was set for him to commit and the commitment to be accepted by Will Muschamp and the others. And to this point, Muschamp hasn't acknowledged that commitment through his Spurs up thing. So we'll see what happens with the Walker case. USC target defensive back DJ Daniel of Georgia Military was offered by Ole Miss. Clemson offered 2020 defensive end Miles Murphy of Powder Springs, Georgia. USC offered 2021 Tony Grimes of Virginia Beach and 2021 offensive lineman Colin Henrick of Washington, D.C. Tight end Tyler Fromm, a one-time USC target, whose brother's a quarterback at Georgia, committed to Auburn. Basketball, Clemson offered 2020 6'6" Henry Coleman of Richmond. USC's in the Final Five with 2019 small forward Wendell Moore of Concord, North Carolina, along with Duke, North Carolina, NC State, and Wake Forest. And to that, I say good luck. Clemson offered 2020 linebacker Jalen Harrell of Tampa. 2021 athlete Eric McDaniels of Richmond was offered by USC. Greenville quarterback Davis Bevel was offered by Northwestern. Clemson in the top 12 with defensive end Ryan Davis of Apopka, Florida. Today, USC offered 2021 quarterback Caleb Williams of Washington and 2019 defensive back Isaiah Kemp of Wilmington. He's a Duke commitment. 2020 Burns running back Rajay Harris was offered by East Carolina. Cane Bay left-hander Dylan Harley committed to USC. We'll be back.